Hello everyone, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Thank you for joining me in my little corner of the internet where I talk all things planners, fountain pens, and fountain pen inks. Today, I'm actually going to be going through some of my favorite shading inks. And I was going to include so much more, but I'm like 20 I think is enough to go through for now. And instead of doing my usual swatch with my Browse ornament nib, I'm actually going to use my sandwich baggie method because I think this one really shows off the shading well. So let's get started. I've got my Hobonichi A5 notebook here with 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. I'm going to be writing out the name with my Kakimori stainless steel nib, and then I'll be using my pipette to basically put some ink on the page, and then again my sandwich baggie. Very, well, these two anyway, are very affordable swatching tools. Let's go get started. The first ink in my lineup today is Diamine ink. We've got Diamine Weeping Willow, and this one is a fantastic chromo shader. Now I've got to figure out how much to put on here. I'm not going to go crazy because sometimes, yeah, definitely less is more, especially when it comes to these. And then let's do my paper baggie here so you can see the shading that you're going to get with this ink. And these are going to take a little bit longer to dry because there's definitely going to be more ink on the paper than there normally would be. Oh, but it's already so pretty. So we have Diamine Weeping Willow. It's a gorgeous light kind of beige, but then when it starts to dry, there's a little bit of green in it. Really, really pretty. And obviously I'm going to show you all of these once they're dried. So that's Diamine Weeping Willow. The next ink that I really like when it's shading is the Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon. Now, I know some people call this a poopy ink or a poopy green, and not a lot of people enjoy that. I don't mind it too much. So I'm going to go like this. And I just realized that I am writing on the page immediately after my new pen day page, so there might be some bleed through happening just on this side. Normally I'm so much better about making sure that there's like 2 pages between that, but not today. So that's okay. Look at that beautiful poopy green color. I know some people really don't like it, but I think it's stunning, and it's so fun to see it in a writing sample. So this is Ferris Wheel Press Goose Poupon, kind of like that gray poupon. Lovely. Another Ferris Wheel Press ink that I really love for its shading is Ferris Wheel Press Oyster Hour. Now, I know that I'm showing these, and many of these Ferris Wheel Press inks are no longer in production, so I do apologize for that. But I really wanted to share some of the favorites that I have in my collection. I feel like it's important for me to use what I have and sharing it in this way. Just because something's no longer in production by a specific brand doesn't mean that I just stop using it. Will just make a caveat that these unfortunately are no longer, the Ferris Wheel Press anyway, ones are no longer available. Now this looks really light, but when it dries, that brownie beige is so lovely. And then when you write with it, again, some people, I was one of those people too who thought this ink was too light to write with at first, but I even put it in a really fine nib and I love it. So this is Oyster Hour, and I don't find it too dry either. It's just a stunning, stunning ink. And my last one from Ferris Wheel Press is Peter Moss, a really beautiful green. And at first I was like, is this one really a lovely shading ink? Does Ferris Wheel Press really do shading inks beautifully? And this does. Now, I will have to say as well, when it comes to shading inks, you really get more of the the shading effect when you are using broader nibs. And I mean, I've gotten some of the shading as well when I've used, you know, my fine and extra fine, but it's not as prominent, you know, versus using a broad or a medium nib. Oh, lovely. Such a gorgeous green that I feel like it's not too in your face. Oh, now Lucy's at the door. So Ferris wheel, press, Peter Moss. And I think shading inks, unlike shimmer inks where you know if an ink is a shimmer ink or a sheener, for some shading inks it's a lot more subtle, but for other inks it's really, really distinct. It's a chromo shader. But and actually I'm seeing this on the box now. This one has a tiny bit of sheen, but when you get the ink pooling in different areas, you really do see the shading here. So that's Ferris Wheel Press Peter Moss. The next ink I want to show you is actually going to be representative of a whole brand of these inks, and I don't unfortunately have a lot of them left over, although I think I could actually. Oh, that one's a good one. Hold on. I'm still looking through like my stash of what's left over of this. But anyway, Kitty Inkpot. These inks are so great for shading. And this one particularly is Elegy of the Fallen. I don't want so much. And I received this from a pen friend, but actually all of the ink samples from Kitty Inkpot that I've purchased are from so-and-so in Australia. And the shipping actually is generally from Australia to Canada. We say generally. Quick. Lovely. That is going to shade beautifully. But just all of the Kitty Inkpot inks that I've ever tried just have this beautiful chromo shading factor in them. And I'm going to show another one here shortly here, but this one is Kitty Inkpot Elegy of the Fallen. And I haven't actually really had any issues with Kitty Inkpot. They've performed well in my fine and extra fine, so highly recommend Kitty Inkpot. I don't have a discount code or affiliate link or anything with so-and-so. I just want to recommend them because I had a great experience with them. So Kitty Inkpot, we've got Elegy of the Fallen, but I also have another one here, which there's very little left of this sample. It is Cloud Echo. And I'm going to use the last of this sample for this here because this one just shades beautifully. And making sure that see this one I put too much on. Yeah. Ooh. But look at the shape of that. That's very cool. And then I just wipe off the sandwich bag on a cloth on this side here. But the way this one shades, come on, let's get some on my nib holder here. Oh, I got some on the paper. So we have Kitty Inkpot Cloud Echo. This one shades just beautifully. I think all of the Kitty Inkpot inks I've ever tried have just shaded beautifully. So highly recommend giving those a try. So that is Cloud Echo. The next ink I have here is an ink that I purchased at the San Francisco Pen Show last year. It is Coobe Milk Chocolate. I tried a sample of this from, the friend had sent this to me, and I was so lucky to be able to get a box, or I say box, but the bottle of this on the Friday of the San Francisco Pen Show. I think it was literally sold out on the Friday before noon. And I was lucky to be able to, I think, get one of the last like 3 bottles that they had. Such a stunning brown pink. You know me with my dusty pinks and my browns. Just so fun. There we go. And then oh, there's a little blue there from Cloud Echo, but that's okay. It's really fun actually doing all of my swatches this way. So this is Coobe Milk chocolate, and the way that this dries is just stunning. I really love the way that this dries. And I mean, unfortunately, when you're swatching the ink versus writing with it, especially with a finer and extra fine nib, you're not going to get all of those intricacies that you're seeing in these swatches here, but it's still fun to be able to swatch them and use them and dream that my extra fine platinum nib will show off all of these properties. So you can already see the way that it's drying there. Oh, I cannot wait to show you all of these once they're dry. So Coobe milk chocolate. Next, I have Coobe strawberry chocolate. So there's a whole series of these chocolate inks. You've got milk chocolate, strawberry chocolate, and bitter chocolate. And bitter chocolate for me was just okay. It was a dark brown ink that didn't feel like it had much dimension, whereas the pink in this, lovely, lovely. And I just want to make sure that I don't spill over into milk chocolate. Oh, one of the best pinks that I've ever tried is this ink. And it behaves really well in a fine or an extra fine pen. So this is the great thing about shading inks, is that you really don't have to worry too much about whether it's going to clog your pen. But isn't that just a lovely pink? And then when it pools in certain areas, you're going to see some chromo shading happening there. Again, one of the more subtle shading inks that I have, but still generally very beautiful. Coobe strawberry chocolate. The next ink I have here is from an ink that I purchased from Vancouver Pen Shop. It's Robert Oster Van Pen 86. It's their store exclusive ink with Robert Oster. And I remember when I went to their shop, not last October, but the October before, the first thing I asked is there anything exclusive that you have? And I wanted to purchase it as like my souvenir for visiting Vancouver. And they said, this is our exclusive ink. And I bought it without even trying it. They just said it's kind of like a brown, gray, green. And I was not disappointed. This ink shades so beautifully. And I cannot, like, again, this whole exercise of this, I cannot wait for you to see these once they're dried. I feel like I have to add actually just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more here. Just to get some of that effect. There we go. There we go. And then this one also behaves really well in a pen. Now I don't have too many Robert Oster inks. I think I have 3 bottles and maybe 1 sample, but Robert Oster inks, whoa, are generally very wet when it comes to these, but when it comes to shimmers, the Robert Oster inks I stay away from just because their shimmer inks, their shimmer particles are slightly larger and they're more prone to clogging a pen, but their regular inks that shade like this are stunning. Like you can see there's the little bit of brown, maybe beige, and a little bit of green there. Wonderful. So that's Robert Oster Van Pen 86, the ink exclusive, or the exclusive ink for the Vancouver Pen Shop. The next ink we have is one of my dear, dear favorites. It's Taccia Ume Murasaki. Now this one, while also a shading ink, I think this one also sheens a little bit more than the others do, but I still wanted to share this because it is one of my all-time favorite inks. And how could I not share it, especially when it's got such an interesting color palette once you see it dried. I'm getting ink all over myself here. But it wouldn't be an inking video if I didn't get ink all over myself. Somebody said that to me actually. They're like, how do you manage to keep your hands clean even in an inking video? And I'm like, oh, you haven't seen me spill ink. But then I just scrub it very, very diligently with a sponge. So this is Taccia. This is a very wet ink, Ume Murasaki. And it's got hints of purple and burgundy and pink. It's just so beautiful when you see the swatch like that. Oh, gorgeous. Taccia Ume Murasaki. The next brand of inks are probably my favorite in terms of shading. We have Sailor, and the first one I'm going to show you is Sailor Mano Kuri. This one is such an interesting ink because when you swatch it versus when you write with it, look like two completely different inks, and it just amazes me how Sailor's able to do that. So let's look at the way that this goes down. You know, I tried to do an intricate design, and then I remember that as soon as I swatch it, it just blobs. Look at that. It looks purple, but then certain areas of that look brown. So interesting. And then when you write with it, it looks different. So you've got Sailor, Mano, Kuri. Again, stunning ink. I love how that shades, but look at how different it looks to the writing sample. Just amazes me. Next in the Sailor Mano line, we have Sailor Mano Shirakashi. I featured this in the green and gold inks that I did, was it last week? And it is being featured again because the way that this shades, and I needed to show it in a proper swatch rather than just my blouse ornament nib, because this definitely looks different when you do a sandwich baggy swatch. Because I think you can really see the intricacies when you do this. Something so simple as a sandwich bag, showing off the properties of the ink. Like, look at how beautiful that green looks. Might need to wash this bag. And when it dries, I feel like there's going to be hints of brown that pop up there. And that's why I love Sailor, because the way that they're able to get so many chromo shading inks, like if you've heard of Sailor 123, for example, I used to have that, or Sailor Mano Haha, for example. Those are beautiful Shirakashi shading inks. Gorgeous. You can already see some of the brown popping up here too. Stunning. The next Sailor ink that I absolutely love is Ink Studio 273. This one, it looks beige, okay? On the label, it looks beige, but when you swatch it, and even in the bottle, it looks pink. So watch this. I'm always amazed by this ink, and I love using it because it just surprises me each time. Where's my sandwich baggie? It's like I'm out of routine here. Gorgeous. Oh, love it. So it looks pink, but the bottle is like this beige. So where is that coming from? So it's the Sailor Ink Studio 273. You can see some of the way that it's chroma shading. There's like the main color I see is the pink, but then there's those undertones of beige. Gorgeous. Next in the Sailor line, Sailor Ink Studio 280, another favorite. And I think I say that all the time, but these are my favorite shading inks. This one is similar, or was also featured in my video for Pilot Iroshizuku dupes, but it's not quite there. This one has, you can see that there's some hints of pink in there too. Just wait for that to dry. And yes, like I said at the beginning of the video, I will show all of these dried. So this is Sailor Ink Studio 280. Lovely. The last in my Sailor inks that I really enjoy for shading is Sailor Shikiori Kitsune Biori. I'm on like the last drops of this bottle, but don't worry, I purchased a second one. It's not that often that I purchase or have two bottles of the same ink, but this one I had to, because when you see it, It's one of those inks that you're like, it's one of those really more understated shading inks because you don't see as much of, I think, that shading in the writing sample. I'm going to try and show you now here. So this is Sailor, Shikiori. Is it Shikiori or is it Shikiori? Kitsune. Whoop. Fiori. Just wait until that dries. You get the pinks and the browns. It's just such a stunning ink. The next ink I have is an ink that I got at the San Francisco Pen Show from Van Ness. It is Van Diemen's Overcast. And they have a whole line of these, but I think had 3 or 4 of these. And these were the ones I decided to keep because, my gosh, the chromo shading in these inks. Okay, let me close that before I make a mess here. The chromo shading that's happening in these inks is unreal. That blue, and look, even when I lifted it up, it's got that purple already. Gorgeous. It looks very light on camera, but I did write with it using a fine nib. So this is Van Diemen's Overcast. And yeah, look at the hues of the pink and the blue and the purple. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. And I know I've been saying stunning and gorgeous and lovely. I feel like my vocabulary is limited in the amount of adjectives that I could use to describe these inks, but beautiful. Next in the Van Diemen's line, we have Riverbank. And I'm excited for these Van Diemen's ones. I really should use them in spring. I feel like they're really great spring colors. Now it looks like it's going down brown. But, and I'm going to close the sample here because I know me, I'd knock it down and then where would we be? And then pink. Right? Like, what do you think of that? Lovely. They look really light. I know they look really light, but I promise you, when I've written with them, they've been legible, not too dry. Lovely. You can get these from Van Ness, and you can use my discount code, which is in the description below. Van Diemen's Riverbank. Look at the amount of colors that are in there. Now, again, it's one of those things where you may not be able to see all of those different colors in your extra fine or fine nib when you're writing, but it's still just so fun to see that. Last in my Van Diemen's lineup, we have Underflow. And I forgot what this one was, but the thing that I like about the samples from Van Ness is that the label will normally be colored the same as the ink. So if you can't remember whether it's a pink or a blue or purple, just look at the label on the sample and you'll be able to tell. I mean, it's not going to be the exact shade, but yeah. Okay. Oh, lovely. Anybody who loves blue or teal, look at that. I mean, gosh, amazing. You definitely see a few like a bit of purple in there as well. Like these chromo shading inks from Van Diemen's definitely hit it out of the park. So this is Van Diemen's Underflow. Lovely. And the last brand that I'll be showing is Wearingeul, and the first one I'll be showing from Wearingeul is Purgatorio. Funny I'm seeing this now. I was actually watching, oh, what was it? The movie with Tom Hanks. Is it The Inferno? Yeah, I was watching Inferno last night. And they were talking about Dante, because the whole Dante's Inferno and Purgatorio thing. That was totally off topic, and I don't know why I needed to mention that. But I love this ink because, again, it's one of those dusty pinks that really shades well. And when you see it in the writing sample, again, it's one of those that looks really light, but I enjoy it so much. Purgatorio. Just wait for it to dry, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So Wearingeul Purgatorio. And last but not least, some might find this controversial, but I've also enjoyed Wearingeul White Rabbit. This is a lighter ink, but, oh, just opening that up here. It is a lighter ink, but I've come to really love it. Even when I'm using it in a fine platinum nib, it's a beautiful ink. And with the right, it's got the right amount of flow that it can show off that shading beautifully. I really enjoy this method of swatching with the paper baggie. I mean, I do love swatching with my Browse ornament nib as well, but it's just so fun seeing all the different patterns that I can get with a sandwich bag. Wearingeul White Rabbit, you're going to see the way that it dries and the way that it pools. Just the shading is stunning. I'm going to wait for all of these to dry, and then I'll show you what the heck I was talking about. Here we go. So these are mostly dry, and I'll show you close-ups of these so you can see the overall shading effect. The unfortunate thing here is with these first four, it is affected by the fact that I had writing immediately on the other side, which you can see bleed through here, but you can still see the beautiful shading that's happening here with Weeping Willow. You've got like the beige and then that lovely brown pink, and there's even some green in there too. And then Goose Poupon, when you get that ink pooling, it really turns into this lovely dark olive green. I really, really like that. Ferris Wheel Pressed Oyster Hour. Again, it's one of those browns that you think it's just beige, you think it's boring, but then when it shades, it really, really is beautiful. Ferris Wheel Peter Moss, again, one of the more subtle shading inks that I have, but when you see it in a pen, and I think I've inked it up in my Pelikan M800 before, which is a definitely a water nib for me, you can really see the shading in that, and especially in a Zentangle, these inks are stunning. So let's look at the next ones. So with these 6, look at the way, I'm going to bring the book down a bit, Kitty Inkpot Elegy of the Fallen, there's like blue and gray in there, along with maybe a tinge of orange or yellow with the pink. It's so, so pretty. Cloud Echo, you get a little bit more of like the grayish blue in there. Really, really love that. Milk Chocolate, you've got more of a brown coral, but then it's a darker coral here. Really, really pretty, dusty brown pink. And then Strawberry Chocolate, you don't think you're going to get much here, but when you actually get the ink pooling, the contrast between like the lighter areas versus the more saturated areas is really beautiful. And then we have Robert Oster Van Pen 86. This one I really loved because the base color, I guess the lighter color, is more brown, beige, green. But then in those saturated areas, it really is this stunning kind of warm chocolatey brown. And then Taccia Ume Murasaki. There's something about this ink that when it just pools, it really shows off the properties of the shading in this ink. It's hard for me to describe because it really is better shown in a Zentangle, but in here you can see where it pools beautifully here, and then you've got pink and maroon. It's just such a lovely, lovely ink. And here we have some of my favorite Sailor inks. Look at Sailor Manukuri, okay? This purple, how can you see that in here? It's such an interesting ink that is so, so surprising. Highly recommend this one. It looks really light, but is very, very legible. And then Sailor Manyo Shirakashi. There's a little bit of sheening in this, so you've got some of the pooling happening here, but that green, and then in the saturated areas, really, really dark green, and a little bit, I think, of brown happening in there as well. Makes it so interesting. Then you have Sailor Ink Studio 273. You've got the lighter pink, and then in the darker saturated areas, it's a really bright pink with a little bit of brown around the edges too. Wonderful. Sailor Ink Studio 280. Oh my gosh, you've got the kind of yellowy green as the base color, but then you've got that blast of like pinky brown. How does Sailor do it? How does Sailor do it? Then one of my favorites, Sailor Shikiori Kitsune Biori. Now, if it was just a one-dimensional type of ink where there wasn't a lot of shading, it would probably be really boring, but the shading adds so much dimension. You've got this dusty pinky brown with a darker brown in the saturated areas. So beautiful when you've got it in a pen and you're doing a Zentangle. Highly recommend trying that one. And then Van Diemen's Overcast. Overcast, I think. What color was that supposed to be? Was it green or blue? And then you've got so much purple and pink happening here with the blue and the green pooling around the edges. And then Van Diemen's Riverbank, pink, but then you've got all of the green happening in there as well. And then lastly, Van Diemen's Overflow. Even in the writing sample, in the wetter areas, you can see the shading and the chromo shading happening here. So you've got blue with pink and purple and green. These three Van Diemen's ones I highly recommend purchasing because they're just so fun to write with. And then last but not least, these ones are almost dry, but I wanted to show you. Wearingeul Purgatorio, light pink, but then in these shaded areas, there's a little bit of like a orangey, yellowy happening thing here. What am I saying? The orangey yellow thing happening here. And then you see that a little bit actually in the pooling areas here in the writing sample. You may not see it as much in a fine or an extra fine nib, but you can definitely see it in larger nibs or if you're using a dip pen like the Kakimori stainless steel nib. And then lastly, Wearingeul Rabbit. Did this disappoint? Not at all, because you've got that really light beigey pink, but then in these high saturation areas, it looks like there's a little bit of gray coming out. And then areas of really high, I guess, contrast or brighter pink that's happening here. You can see some of the shading happening in here as well, that some areas look a little bit more gray than others. It's such an unassuming ink, but when you swatch it like this, you can really see those characteristics. So there's some of my favorite shading inks. I almost wish that I could have done more, but then I wouldn't have had enough room on the page. But I'm also trying to really work through my ink collection and trying to really appreciate what I have. And that's why I like doing these ink explorations, because it reminds me of the inks that I have in my collection and helps to keep me from spending more money on inks that I don't really need. But if you wanted to purchase some of these inks for your collection, who am I to say no to that? That is it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know down below. Otherwise, don't forget to hit that like button and to subscribe. Thanks again for watching and have yourselves a great day.